A Korean Mafia boss was having tea alone, until identical twins called him father. The steam rising from the porcelain teacup was the only thing in motion within Jun's immediate orbit. A thin, wavering spiral, almost deliberate in its ascent, that faded into nothingness before reaching the line of his jaw. Everything else in the tea room of the Grand Obsidian Hotel existed in a state of practiced stillness, as if the space itself had been trained not to fidget. The room was vast without being loud. Marble floors polished to a reflective sheen stretched beneath heavy velvet, drapes the color of dried wine. Light filtered in through tall windows in disciplined columns, diffused just enough to flatter the wealth seated beneath it. Conversations remained subdued, voices cushioned by upholstery and etiquette. No one here needed to raise their voice to be heard. Sunday mornings brought a particular density to the air. Silver spoons chimed softly against bone china. Chairs slid back with careful restraint. Laughter floated up in controlled bursts, measured, performative, often hollow. Families leaned toward one another with the subtle urgency of people attempting to convince themselves that this, precisely this, was happiness. Jun sat alone at a table meant for four. He always chose a table meant for four. The habit had formed years ago, quietly, without ceremony. It was rooted in a superstition he refused to examine too closely, let alone explain. A private rebellion against the narrowing geometry of his life. A refusal to acknowledge that certain absences might be permanent. He was 42 years old. His suit was bespoke, tailored with the kind of obsessive precision that suggested not taste, but control. The fabric alone cost more than most people's monthly rent. He sat with a stillness that unsettled the waitstaff, an absolute economy of movement that made them unsure whether he was finished or merely pausing. To the staff, he was the chairman. His interests were wide-ranging, vaguely defined, and frighteningly efficient. Entire careers had been made, or quietly ended, by a single nod from him. To the rest of the room, he was something colder, an immaculate statue in human form, inscrutable and remote. He glanced at his watch. The mechanism inside was a marvel of miniature engineering, assembled by hands that would never know his name. It told him he had been seated for exactly 19 minutes. He was not late. He was not early. He was waiting for nothing. Or rather, he was marking time. Enduring the anniversary of a day he wished he could sandblast from existence. A date that returned each year with the stubborn reliability of gravity. The chair across from him remained empty. It carried weight. Not metaphorical weight, actual, physical presence. As though the absence itself exerted a pull, threatening to curve his posture inward. He resisted it instinctively. His spine remained straight. Discipline had long since replaced comfort. He lifted the teacup. The liquid was dark, fragrant, unapologetically bitter. And then, movement. Color intruded at the edge of his peripheral vision, soft but coordinated. Pastel shades advancing with unsettling precision. Two figures appeared beside his table. They moved with the quiet competence of practiced operators. No wasted motion, no unnecessary sound. The comparison that flashed through his mind was absurd and immediate. Seasoned cat burglars. That the intruders could not have been more than 10 years old only sharpened the effect. They were identical twins. Young black girls, their hair styled in matching rounded puffs, their expressions alert and evaluating. They wore identical pale pink dresses with stiff, ruffled skirts that whispered softly as they came to a stop. Their shoes were polished. Their posture was deliberate. They looked at him the way engineers might examine a bridge. Jun froze, teacup hovering midway to his mouth. He was accustomed to being approached. Fear came most often, hesitant steps, guarded eyes. Greed followed closely behind. Occasionally desperation, wrapped in trembling politeness. He was not accustomed to children. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the cup back to its saucer. The porcelain touched with a muted clink. The girl on the left placed both palms flat on the pristine white tablecloth and leaned forward. The girl on the right mirrored the motion exactly, as if governed by a shared command structure. They scanned the room in opposite directions, eyes sharp, alert. When the left twin locked eyes with him, her voice dropped to a whisper. "Pretend you're our father." The words landed without preamble. No greeting, no apology, a command. Jun blinked. The carefully assembled mask he wore. Polite indifference reinforced by habit, fractured, just slightly. I'm sorry. His voice emerged low and used. Rough around the edges, like a door opened after years of disuse. 20 minutes, the second twin hissed urgently, glancing over her shoulder. We just need a dad for 20 minutes. She leaned closer. The woman with the hat is coming back. If she sees us alone again, she'll call security. Jun followed her gaze. Across the room, a severe-looking woman stalked between tables. A clipboard hugged to her chest like a shield. Perched atop her head was a hat that resembled an abandoned bird's nest. Aggressively decorative, impossibly balanced. Her eyes scanned the space with the enthusiasm of someone who enjoyed enforcement. He looked back at the girls. I am, he said carefully, not an obvious candidate. He gestured vaguely, to his sharply defined features, his severe tailoring, to the fact that he was very clearly Korean. The left twin rolled her eyes with theatrical impatience. We're adopted, she said. Keep up. Something in her tone arrested him. It wasn't begging. It wasn't fear. It was calculation, negotiation, the voice of someone backed into a corner, who refused to lie down. Jun felt it then, a faint, unfamiliar disturbance in his chest. A spark, small but insistent, interrupting the flat gray continuity of his week. He looked at the empty chairs surrounding the table. He looked at the girls, vibrating with tension but holding their ground. 20 minutes, he said at last, his voice dropping into something conspiratorial. Sit. They didn't hesitate. The twins scrambled into the chairs opposite him, just as the woman with the clipboard rounded a marble column. There you are, she snapped, relief quickly curdling into irritation. I told you, this tea service is for families. Unaccompanied children are not. She stopped. Jun turned his head. He did not scowl. He did not raise his voice. He simply allowed the full weight of his attention to settle on her. It was a look that had silenced boardrooms, a gaze that had ended negotiations before they began. Wars, quiet ones, had concluded beneath it. Is there a problem? He asked. His tone was smooth, pleasant, dangerous. The woman faltered. Her clipboard dipped. I wasn't aware they were with a guardian, sir. They were running through the lobby when. Jun turned to the girls. Chloe, Zoe, he said evenly, inventing names with the same precision he used to sign contracts. Were you running? The twins shook their heads in perfect synchronization. We were looking for you, Papa, Zoe said, sweetness layered thick enough to rot teeth. We got lost. Jun faced the woman again. They were searching for me, he said calmly. Now they are found. You may go. The dismissal was absolute. The woman flushed crimson, murmured something resembling an apology, and retreated with haste. The moment she was out of earshot, the twins exhaled in unison and collapsed back into their chairs. Nice, Chloe said, nodding with approval. You're scary. I am not scary, Jun replied. I am merely distinct. For a brief moment, relief settled at the table. Then, the sharp, rapid clicking of heels against marble announced a new variable. Jun looked up. A woman hurried toward them, coat half open, breath uneven. Panic and exhaustion warred openly across her face. She was beautiful, not in a curated, ornamental way, but with an inherent warmth that stress had failed to extinguish. Her posture suggested someone held together by determination alone. The mother. She spotted the girls and visibly sagged with relief. Then confusion bloomed as she noticed Jun. Girls, she said breathlessly. I told you to wait in the lobby while I parked. The twins straightened, guilt flickering across their faces for the first time. Sorry, Mom, Zoe said, but the hat lady was going to kick us out, so we found a dad. The woman stopped short. Oh my God, she said quickly, mortified. I am so sorry. I hope they haven't been bothering you. They have not, Jun said, standing. In fact, I believe we were about to order cake. Elena hesitated at the edge of the table, one hand gripping the strap of her purse, as if it might anchor her to common sense. The Grand Obsidian was not a place she belonged, not really. She could feel it in the way the marble floors reflected her shoes back at her, sensible flats with worn soles, in the way the air itself seemed curated for people who had never worried about overdraft fees. "Sir, I really can't," she began, lowering her voice. "This place is expensive, and you look like you're waiting for someone." Jun met her eyes. "I am waiting for no one," he said. The truth of it struck him with unexpected force. It landed heavier than he intended, dropping into the space between them like a stone into still water. He gestured toward the chairs. "And the reservation is already paid for. It would be inefficient to waste it." Elena blinked, clearly unsure how to respond to the word inefficient being applied to cake. "The staff here," Jun added, lowering his voice and leaning in just enough to be conspiratorial, "are extremely particular about empty chairs. You would be doing me a favor." It was a lie, but it was a gentle one. Elena searched his face carefully, looking for condescension, for irritation, for the kind of trap wealthy strangers sometimes set without realizing it. She found none of those things. What she found instead was a quiet sadness held in check by impeccable manners. Under the table, Chloe nudged her leg. "Please, Mom," she whispered. "He's cool. He scared the hat lady." Zoe nodded vigorously, like professionally. Elena exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that came from someone who had spent years being responsible without backup. "Okay," she said finally, "just for a little while." She extended a hand. "I'm Elena." Jun stood and took it, his grip firm but careful. "Min," he replied. He pulled out the chair for her, an old-fashioned gesture that caught her slightly off guard. As she sat, the faint scent of rain and vanilla drifted from her coat, soft, human, entirely at odds with the hotel's sterile luxury. For the first time in 3 years, the table was full. The waiter approached with visible confusion. He paused, eyes darting between Jun and the unexpectedly vibrant family unit now occupying his section. "Sir," he said cautiously. "More cups," Jun said. "And cake. Whatever the young ladies want." Chloe's eyes widened. Zoe inhaled sharply. "And," Jun continued, glancing at Elena, "chamomile. You look as though the morning was unkind." Elena looked up, startled. "How did you?" "I employ people," he said simply. "I recognize the expression of someone managing a crisis." She laughed softly, a sound edged with exhaustion. "That obvious, huh?" The cake arrived in a 3-tiered stand that looked less like dessert and more like architecture. Pastries gleamed beneath the lights, macarons in precise colors, tarts glazed to perfection, confections priced well beyond grocery logic. The twins abandoned all pretense of espionage. They descended upon the stand with surgical focus, arguing over chocolate versus raspberry, debating optimal distribution strategies. Crumbs scattered across the tablecloth. Zoe theorized aloud that the hotel was actually a spaceship disguised as a building. Chloe corrected her on propulsion mechanics. Jun watched them with an intensity that surprised him. He was accustomed to silence, to order, to rooms that bent to his will. This was chaos. And yet, this noise was different. It was not intrusive. It was alive. Elena sipped her tea and watched him watching the girls. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "Most men would have called security." Jun turned his gaze to her. "I have a high tolerance for bold strategies." She smiled faintly. "They identified a threat," he continued, "assessed risk, executed a plan. I respect efficiency." Elena laughed then, a genuine sound that caused the waiter to pause nearby. "Please don't encourage them," she said. "They're already too clever." She trailed off. Her smile dimmed as she stirred her tea unnecessarily. "Their father," she began, then stopped. He wasn't much for strategy, more of a leave-when-it-gets-hard type. The admission lingered between them. Jun understood the currency of pain. He traded in it daily. "Strategy," he said softly, "is often learned through necessity. It seems you have taught them how to survive." Elena met his eyes. "I try, but it's hard being everything at once. Today was supposed to be a treat. We saved for 2 months to come here. Princess tea." She gestured vaguely. "Then parking went wrong. We were late. I thought I'd ruined it." She glanced at the girls, now balancing spoons on their noses. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving it." Jun adjusted his cuff, a nervous habit he hadn't indulged in years. "My wife," he said, the word stiff with disuse. She loved this place. The lemon tart. We came every year. On this day. Elena stopped stirring. Is that why you were alone? She asked gently. He nodded once. She passed 3 years ago. I come here to remember, but remembering often feels like sitting in a cold room waiting for a ghost. He looked at the twins again. Chloe successfully balanced a spoon. Zoe applauded. Today, Jun said, his voice lower. The room is loud, and I find I do not resent it. That's a long time to drink tea alone, Elena said. It felt longer, he replied. Music interrupted them, a sudden, lively shift from the piano. A waltz. Father stood, taking daughter's hands, guiding them to the small parquet floor. It was a Sunday tradition. Chloe and Zoe watched, then looked at each other, then at Jun. Papa, Zoe said, grinning. It's time to dance. Jun stiffened immediately. No, Chloe was already standing. She grabbed his hand. You're wearing a 3-piece suit, she argued. That legally means you know how. Elena laughed, hiding behind her teacup. She's right. The suit implies ballroom proficiency. Jun looked at the room, at the stares he would draw, at his reputation. Then he looked at Chloe's face. She wasn't afraid of him. She just wanted the moment. He stood. Very well, he sighed. But if you step on my shoes, I will deduct it from your inheritance. Deal. The rhythm came back to him effortlessly. Muscle memory. History. He spun her, dipped her. Then Zoe cut in seamlessly, laughing. Jun laughed too. A deep and used sound. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't want the song to end. And when it did, panic bloomed, sharp and sudden. The 20 minutes were over. The transition from the golden warmth of the tea room to the flat, fluorescent hum of the parking garage felt abrupt, like waking from a vivid dream and realizing the room was colder than remembered. The twins skipped ahead, still buoyant with sugar and triumph, their laughter ricocheting off concrete pillars. Jun followed at a measured pace beside Elena, his polished Oxford striking the floor in sharp, disciplined clicks. The sound echoed precise, controlled, at odds with the chaotic energy orbiting them. Elena's car waited near the far wall. A practical sedan, older, its paint dulled by years of weather and grocery carts. It bore the subtle scars of a life, lived carefully, but without excess. 2 rows away, a black Phantom waited, immaculate, a driver standing beside it with studied indifference, very deliberately not watching his employer escort a family toward a far humbler vehicle. Elena stopped at the driver's door, fumbling for her keys. You really didn't have to walk us down, she said, glancing up at him. Under the unforgiving light, exhaustion returned to her face. The single mother replaced the Princess T version of herself. I know this was a lot. Thank you. Truly. You made their year. Jun stood with his hands clasped behind his back, posture ingrained through decades of restraint. He looked at the girls, now buckled into the back seat, faces pressed to the glass, waving furiously. Then he looked at Elena. He wanted to say something that would bridge the distance between their lives, between silent penthouses and cramped apartments, between chaos and control. Instead, he reached into his breast pocket and produced a card. It was heavy stock, matte black, gold lettering, nothing on it but a name and a private number. For the next time you require a strategist, he said, offering it to her. Elena took the card. Her fingers brushed his, warm, calloused, undeniably real. I don't think we'll be sneaking into high tea again, she said with a soft laugh, though her eyes lingered on the card longer than necessary. Strategy is not limited to tea, Jun replied. Sometimes it applies to flat tires, homework disputes, or silence that becomes too loud. He held her gaze a fraction longer than etiquette allowed. Drive safely, Elena. She nodded, then climbed into the car. As the taillights spiraled up the exit ramp and disappeared, the silence rushed back in. But this time, it didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a cage. Later that night, Jun sat alone in his penthouse, city lights spread beneath him like a disciplined constellation. The apartment was immaculate, museum clean, untouched by evidence of living. He stared at his phone. Typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, he sent a message. 20 minutes were insufficient. I find myself wondering if the team requires a permanent consultant. 3 weeks later, the consultant stood inside a city aquarium on a Saturday afternoon and immediately regretted his wardrobe choices. The humidity was oppressive. The noise was relentless. Children swarmed in every direction. Somewhere nearby, popcorn and chlorine formed an unholy alliance. His cashmere sweater clung uncomfortably. Then he saw them. The twins waited near the jellyfish tank, glowing blue light washing over their faces. Matching denim overalls. Elena stood between them in a yellow sundress that seemed to gather every available photon in the dim space. Zoe spotted him first. She didn't wave. She pointed. "Men," Chloe shouted, ignoring several aggressively worded quiet please signs. Heads turned. Jun didn't care. He walked toward them. The crowd parted instinctively around his presence, yielding without understanding why. "Report," he said solemnly when he reached them. Zoe grinned. "We have identified the jellyfish. They have no brains. Chloe says they're a reminder of boys at school," she added. The afternoon unfolded in strange, wonderful fragments. Jun held a half-eaten pretzel while Elena tied Zoe's shoe. He explained shipping logistics to Chloe while they stared into a shark tank. "If the shark wanted to leave," Chloe asked seriously, "would he need a plan?" "Everyone needs a plan," Jun said. "Sometimes the tank feels comfortable. Sometimes the shark doesn't realize he's trapped until someone shows him the ocean." Elena watched him closely. "Are you talking about the shark?" she asked softly. "Or yourself?" "The difficulty of changing one's nature," he admitted. She reached out, resting her hand lightly against his arm. "Maybe the shark just needs a reason," she whispered. For the first time, Jun didn't feel like the shark. He felt like the diver standing at the edge. 6 months passed. The erosion of Jun's solitude was not explosive. It was incremental. Tuesday dinners in Elena's apartment. Juice boxes appearing in the Rolls-Royce glove compartment. Learning he was terrible at Mario Kart, but excellent at Common Core math. Then came the night his phone rang during a high-stakes acquisition meeting. He silenced a room full of lawyers with one raised hand. "Speak." It was Elena. Panicked. Shaking. Zoe fell. "Broken arm. Hospital. I forgot my wallet." "Breathe," Jun said calmly. "Which hospital?" "I am on my way." He stood. "We are finished for the day," he told the room. "But sir, my daughter has broken her arm." The lie came easily and tasted like truth. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fatigue. It was a scent Jun associated with efficiency under pressure, controlled chaos, triage, hierarchy. He navigated it instinctively. Coat already unbuttoned, tie loosened, presence sharpened into something formidable. By the time Elena finished explaining the fall for the third time, Zoe had been moved to a private room. Jun hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't threatened anyone. He simply occupied space in a way that made obstacles reconsider their purpose. Forms were expedited. Calls were made. An orthopedist arrived earlier than expected. Within 20 minutes, Elena was holding a cup of tea that didn't taste like despair.